Today we're going to be looking at a tier list for Pokemon to be used in Tera raids as supporting Pokemon. Support Pokemon aid the main damage dealer so that the main damage dealer can just end the game, one shot, we're done. This usually comes to providing Screech, Fake Tears, or Helping Hand support to boost the offensive Pokemon's damage, providing screens, attack drops, spatak drops to help your team survive, or Taunt to prevent the enemy Dragonite from Drag Advancing to +6 and sweeping your whole team. Standard Loup&Snoop tier list rules. The tiers are kind of fuzzy to +or-1, so if something's just up or down by one tier, it's not a big deal. 2 tiers, that's a big difference. And how entries are sorted within a tier doesn't mean anything about how strong one is relative to the other. Because this is a tier list about supports, everything in this tier list is going to be geared towards taking down 6-star and 7-star raid bosses with a team of human players. Just to clarify a couple of weird tiers here, very specific composition tier means that it is a support Pokemon that you only want to bring when you have a very specific teammate. You'll only use Pokemon in this tier when you can coordinate with your team on Discord or Twitch or whatever. We're all going to go for X strategy. The horrendously outclassed tier means a Pokemon's either bad or that there's just no reason to pick them because there are other Pokemon that do the same job but much better. S tier means if you bring that Pokemon, I don't care what raid it's for and I don't care about your team composition, putting that Pokemon on your team will probably make it better. A tier supports are extremely solid, very versatile, very bulky, reliable, and sometimes will have a strong niche to be why you would pick them. B tier supports are super solid supports that are very, very good at what they do. They're just not super generic like an A tier. C tier supports usually are like really specific as to when you can use them, or they're really useful in very specific circumstances. D tier supports are even more niche or just generally like it's kind of hard to use them. And before we start tiering, the most important moves for support Pokemon are going to be Screech and Fake Tears or related defense dropping moves, because those dramatically amplify the damage dealt by your offensive Pokemon. If a Pokemon does not have either of those two moves, there better be a very good reason to use it. Almost all the Pokemon in this tier list are going to have one of those moves, and this tier list is going to basically show you, okay, what do I really bring, or like what has good value. This is because we look for other support moves too, such as Taunt, Helping Hand, Reflect, Light Screen, Charm, etc. We'll get into that as we go along. First, I'm going to discuss all the Pokemon that I personally have full first-hand knowledge of. I've built them and I've tried them in a bunch of raids. I know exactly how they work, followed by builds that other people have like tried to use or suggested around, and I can just give you my thoughts on them. Without further ado, let's get started. Let's start with the S tier Umbreon because he's going to be like the bar that we're going to hold other Pokemon to. Umbreon is very bulky and he gets all of the major common support moves: Screech, Fake Tears, Taunt, Helping Hand, Skill Swap, both screens. That coupled with nice defensive typing, Umbreon is like the poster child of this is what I want a support to be. Most of the other Pokemon on this list are going to be carving out their own niche, and we'll get to that shortly. Teapot. The idea with Teapot is to skill swap Teapot's weak armor ability with the raid boss's usually terrible ability, something like Moxie or Mirror Armor or something. And weak armor will allow you to get a lot of defense drops onto the raid boss. Yes, he gets rid of the ability and he sets up to get like defense drops, but Teapot does very little outside that. The only real good support moves he has after that are going to be like Will-O-Wisp, Light Screen, Reflect. He basically has one really good turn and then he's done. And he's also physically frail, and a lot of the Pokemon that have these terrible abilities are physical attackers. When I'm looking for a support Pokemon, I want something that can provide support throughout the whole match. Espathra is next, and I feel like she's maybe like B or C tier. Espathra has a decent support move pool: Helping Hand, Feather Dance, both screens, and Lumina Crash. Lumina Crash is -2 Spadef. As a support though, she has two main problems. One is that Lumina Crash actually hits a little bit too hard and can sometimes make a Tera raid boss put up its shields, which is very, very bad. We try to avoid that like the plague. Second is that she has very low bulk relative to other options. Like those support moves are all kind of like generic and you find in other Pokemon. So if another Pokemon has the same thing but is bulkier, you will pick the Pokemon that is bulkier, and that Pokemon is not Espathra. Serena is solid like A or B tier. Serena is one of the few exceptions to the rule of Screech and Fake Tears being king. Her main support move pool consists of both screens, Trop Kick, which gives a -1 attack debuff to the boss, and Helping Hand. But the thing about Serena is that she has unique access to the Sweet Veil ability, at least in Scarlet and Violet before Pokemon Home is released, which completely negates sleep. And sleep is a major problem for a lot of raid bosses. In general, a lot of raid bosses will win by putting the whole team to sleep, and eventually when shields are up, you just run out of heal cheers, you're just stuck, and you time out. Serena is a one Pokemon hard counter for sleep for the entire team. She's great against Amoonguss, Dondozo, Blissey, which are all Pokemon that people farm a lot for Herba Mystica. So you're going to be seeing a lot of those particular raids, and those are raids where Serena is going to shine. She is only B tier because of her shortcomings, because she doesn't provide enough of the other support that we're really looking for. Annihilate has Screech, but he's really more of an offensive Pokemon. If I just want to bring a Screecher, I bring literally anything else. I don't bring an Annihilate. Oranguru is an easy S tier. The other major counterexample to fake tiers and Screech being king, Oranguru's Instruct is completely busted for raids and is extremely generic. You can fit Oranguru into many different raid compositions. It's very rare that Oranguru will have any sort of issues surviving, even on super effective hits. Like, I bring Oranguru all the time to King Gambit raids, and even like the Stab Kowtow Cleave doesn't do anything to him. If you want to know more about Oranguru, check out my other video. The very short version is that Instruct copies support moves from your support Pokemon. It sets up your offensive Pokemon more quickly, and if an offensive Pokemon is already set up, Instruct lets them bash the Tera shields much more efficiently and quickly. And Oranguru also has other useful moves in Taunt, Helping Hand, both screens, and Skill Swap. Easy S tier support Pokemon. Venonat. Venonat's main thing is that he has unique access to Compound Eye's Screech, which is a Screech that will never miss. For any strategy where you absolutely need to hit Screech, Venonat has got your back. His Eviolite makes him plenty bulky to stay in the ring with a ton of different raid bosses. The only issue is that his typing sometimes lets him down. He doesn't have Helping Hand, but he does have Acid Spray and Struggle Bug, but I need to give him B tier for this special distinction of a completely accurate Screech. Magneton is also probably B tier, maybe A tier. The thing with Magneton is that he is stupidly bulky and has great defensive typing. He will basically never die. He gets Screech, Metal Sound, Eerie Impulse, Light Screen, and Electric Terrain to counter sleep. The main thing holding back Magneton is basically the lack of Helping Hand and Taunt. But you don't really need to taunt when the whole point is to put up Electric Terrain to force the raid boss to waste their turn using useless sleep moves. You know, actually, just because he's so unkillable, he probably really deserves A tier. Muck. I should probably talk about Muck after Berserker. Berserker is an A tier support Pokemon. A lot of people put him into S tier, and you're wrong. Berserker has the basics. He has Screech, Fake Tears, Taunt, Helping Hand. He also has good defensive typing and is decently physically bulky. Berserker is special in that his Steely Spirit ability buffs any sort of raiding composition that uses steel type attacks. Mostly Tinkaton Gagutsun Hammer and Goldengo Steel Beam. The main thing holding Berserker back from S tier status is mostly that his special bulk is pretty lackluster and will let you down a lot of the time. And if you just have the generic moves, then Pokemon that are bulkier will just take priority. Which brings me to Muck. Muck is basically a bulkier Berserker with a typing that is very complementary to both Umbreon and Berserker. He gets Acid Spray, Screech, Taunt, and Helping Hand. He has all the very generic moves, but of the Pokemon that get the really generic moves, he has good defensive typing and is very bulky. Next are Chansey and Blissey. They basically do the same thing. You always want to bring Chansey with a Violite because it's just bulkier. They're both kind of D tier supports because they mostly just like survive and spam Life Dew to keep your party on life support. They have other support moves like Light Screen, Helping Hand, but if you don't have Screech or Fake Tears are related, you really need something special to be worth bringing, and these two do not have that. Just surviving isn't enough because a lot of the options on this tier list do that while also providing other support. So why would I bring a Blissey? Noivern is mostly just good for Cinderace, and that's kind of it. There are a couple of times where I wanted a really fast taunt, and Noivern being very fast was helpful. Like once I had a Dark Lycanroc where Lycanroc will just taunt your whole team, but because he's a dark type, he's immune to Prankster, and because he's fast, you just outspeed all the other support Pokemon and just cripple the whole team. Noivern was like the only answer to that. That said, all he really brings is Screech and Taunt, and we can usually do better. There's like very few situations where we want to bring Noivern. Iron Moth gets Screech, Acid Spray, Helping Hand, Light Screen, and Struggle Bug. The thing is that with these generic moves, we can usually do better in the bulk department. Iron Moth isn't bad, it's just, Iron Moth has the same problems with a Spothra. Like, you just have bulkier options that do the same thing. Corviknight's probably B tier material. He gets Screech, Fake Tears, Taunt, and Screens. He's got most of the generic tools. He is very critically missing Helping Hand. Corviknight uniquely gets Mirror Armor, which lets you reflect things like Charm and Screech that are headed to you back onto the raid boss, which is great. As a downside, allowing the raid boss to do that without taunting them lets them get that off on the rest of your party. That said, he's pretty solid. As is Screamtail. Screamtail gets Fake Tears, both screens, Helping Hand, Noble Roar, Howl. The two main things Screamtail would really love to have are Taunt or Screech. That said, Screamtail is immensely bulky, so of the Pokemon that have that same generic set of moves, she usually takes pretty high priority. I'm contemplating A versus B tier, but like, I don't know. We'll say that she's like high B tier. Bronzong gets Safeguard. Safeguard is great for blocking sleep and other status directed at your party. Very, very few Pokemon get Safeguard this generation. He also gets Metal Sound, Helping Hand, and Screens, so he basically has most of what you really need. The thing is that Bronzong is slow, so usually the raid boss will be able to status the Bronzong before he can get off the Safeguard. And if the raid boss puts you to sleep before you can get off the Safeguard, it kind of stops you from doing your one important job. That said, he's bulky with really good defensive typing. Metal Sound being a less consistent Fake Tears does hurt him though. Mischievous. I'm going to do Mischievous alongside Golduck. Both Mischievous and Golduck get Wonder Room, which let you flip the SPDEF and defense stats of all the Pokemon on the field. You still use Fake Tears to help your party's special attacks, so you don't have that confusion. But Mischievous and Golduck are great, especially when playing with randos who don't understand that Blissey's special defense is like 14 times her physical defense, or don't realize that Avalugg is 6 times more physically bulky than specially bulky, and they just bring Iron Hands by default. Mischievous and Golduck basically save those raids. Eviolite Mischievous is reasonably bulky, and Mischievous has basically everything you want. Taunt, Helping Hand, Screech, Fake Tears, Wonder Room, and Skill Swap. The only reason she's in B tier is that her physical bulk is still kind of lacking, and for the same thing, Golduck does the same job much better. Golduck also gets Screech, Helping Hand, Taunt, Wonder Room, but he also gets Simple Beam if you know someone who knows someone to get Simple Beam, which can really help you debuff a raid boss or help you buff your allies much more rapidly and get them set up. The thing is that for a lot of the raid bosses where you want to use Wonder Room, Golduck's water typing is just so good defensively that it really helps him out a lot. Simple Beam also helps him help out a lot of other raid compositions that are kind of like struggling to be good. Having not one, but 2 very unique options in Simple Beam, Wonder Room, and some of the more generic moves really elevate Golduck to like a high place. Even though he's not like the bulkiest Pokemon, he is bulky enough to do his thing in peace, and his thing is very unique. In a similar vein, I'm gonna skip straight to Grumpig, and I'm gonna say probably like C tier. Grumpig, you basically pick for Simple Beam strats. You Simple Beam your teammate to make them simple, then you fling Pitaya Berry to give them +2 special attack. And with this, you can coordinate some really fast boosting on the special side for your team. A lot faster than you can do with like anything else. He also has Helping Hand and Taunt. He's decently bulky and does his unique thing very well. The reason I'm only putting into a C tier is because it's pretty hard to coordinate with your team to effectively make use of the Grumpig, because a lot of people don't understand how the ability Simple works and will keep boosting even after they're already at +6. As someone who's used the Grumpig a lot, it is very frustrating, but when you're with someone who understands how he works, he fulfills that unique role very, very well. Grimmsnarl is probably like C tier material. He mostly goes for Fake Tears, Taunt, Spirit Break, Screens. It's that there are other options that do the same thing but are bulkier. It's not like he's bad at what he does, it's like just other Pokemon do it better. Toxapex is extremely bulky, but he only really provides Acid Spray and Chilling Water support. He's going to be currently outclassed by Quillfish, who does the same thing, also a Water Poison type, which is good defensive typing, but brings Intimidate. On top of Intimidate, he has the Acid Spray that you need, Taunt, Thunder Wave, Chilling Water, and Acupressure. Acupressure is very specifically for stored power strategies. What mostly holds Quillfish back is a combination of not being super bulky and also lacking Helping Hand. Toadscruel is another B rank support. Toadscruel has Screech, Reflect, and Taunt, which doesn't sound that great, but he's got like 3 big things going for him. One is decent bulk, second is good defensive typing. He's one of the only Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet that resist the Edgequake combination. And third, Mycelium Might makes him always go second on Screech, so if you run Zoom Lens on Toadscruel, he will never miss Screech. So he's a similar niche to Venonat. Toadscruel's main job is just delivering a very accurate Screech. Honchkrow gets Feather Dance, Screech, Helping Hand, and Taunt. Just by that, I would say he's like B rank support. What makes Honchkrow special is access to Super Luck Night Slash. This allows Honchkrow to be basically the single best Pokemon to bring to Anger Point strategies, where you have like an Anger Point Crocodile or something, where you can use Scope Lens and Night Slash it for a guaranteed crit to get it set up to +6 attack immediately. Night Slash is resisted by all the Anger Point Pokemon that you'd want to run. Of the Pokemon that can get guaranteed crits, he's the only one that actually provides decent support beyond that. Like, I would say him being a B rank support makes him vastly superior to all the other Anger Point enabling Pokemon. Which brings me to Meowscarada. You usually bring level 36 Focus Sash Meowscarada to get the guaranteed Flower Gift crit onto Crocodile or Tauros or whatever with Anger Point to get them set up to +6 for a turn 1 kill. Meowscarada is Honchkrow, but worse. Because of the typing, in order to not kill your teammate, you really need to run a super low level Meowscarada, at which point you don't have any bulk and you can't really like do anything to support the team. The issue here is that the typing is bad for your teammates who use Anger Point strategies. You want to be using Honchkrow's Night Slash. This also holds true of Frost Breath Pokemon such as Cryogonal, who they also have other support moves, but because the typing tends to be bad against all the Anger Point Pokemon, to prevent killing your teammates, you need to run a very low level. Honchkrow is the only one of these Anger Point enablers that you can run at level 100 basically, and then contribute to the team just generally speaking as a support. Dashbun, I hate Dashbun. He's bad. He's just a very passive support Pokemon. I would prefer a Blissey over a Dashbun, honestly. Dashbun's main thing is that he spams Charm to reduce the opponent's attack, and that's kind of it. He has some other support moves like Helping Hand, but you can get that other places. Some YouTubers have made him really popular. He's terrible. Don't bring him to raids. For several of the event raids, he'll survive. He just doesn't contribute. Like, there are supports that provide support, and Dashbun doesn't do enough to help the team. On that note, Dashbun is horrendously outclassed by Azumarill. Support Azumarill, who does the exact same thing, also gets Charm, but also has Light Screen and Fake Tears, also has Helping Hand, and Chilling Water if you have to do the attack debuffs through shields. He's just Dashbun, but better. The main reason I'm putting Azumarill into B tier, despite him being like actually a pretty solid support, is that it's very confusing for your team when they see an Azumarill, because most Azumarill are running belly drum sets. I have gotten so many Helping Hands on my support Azumarill before, it is crazy. It's like, bro, I don't have any attacking moves. I'm just... Stop it. Some people run a Violite Meryl, who is very similarly bulky if you like spec him against a very specific threat like fully physically defensive or fully specially defensive. He'll be similarly bulky to Azumarill, and it'll be more obvious that you're not going for a belly drum strat. Pincurchin, I tried him. He's just Miraidon, but worse. He has like a couple support moves like Electric Terrain and Thunder Wave, but he doesn't have any of the support moves that you really want. I really tried to make him work back before I understood what makes a good support Pokemon, and it's just bad. Just don't use them. Tinkatuff is probably B tier or C tier. Tinkatuff is pretty bulky with a Violite. The main thing that helps Tinkatuff out is Mold Breaker Helping Hand, which allows you to use Helping Hand on Goldengo. She also has Mold Breaker Fake Tears to pierce through Clear Body and Mirror Armor. She's basically one of the most reliable support Pokemon to run alongside Goldengo, who is one of the most common offensive Pokemon to bring to your raid. She also has Mold Breaker Skill Swap to get rid of Goldengo's Good as Gold ability so that your teammates can also all Helping Hand the Goldengo together. She's good. I'm really contemplating between B and C tier, probably like, B tier. She gets a lot of opportunities where she can be used depending on your team more than on the raid boss, if that makes sense. Oh, and Skitter Smack. Scovillain's Spicy Extract gives a target Pokemon +2 attack and -2 defense. The idea is to bring Scovillain to a special attacking raid boss, and you can Spicy Extract your own physical teammates to help set them up faster. And the same move is like a 100% accurate Screech. He also gets Helping Hand and Worry Seed to get rid of obnoxious abilities. Scovillain has 3 major problems. First is that Scovillain is weak to Rock, Flying, and Poison, and Worry Seed for getting rid of obnoxious abilities. Usually obnoxious abilities are on Pokemon that use Flying or Rock type attacks, which makes Worry Seed basically useless. Second is the elephant in the room, which is his low bulk, base 60s across the board or something like that. Third is the human issue of your teammates not understanding what you're going to do and playing around you properly. I've been kicked out of a lot of raids for bringing a Sco villain, even though Sco villain is like the optimal choice. People don't know how to use the support properly. Lucario provides Screech and Helping Hand support, but the lack of bulk on Lucario, a lot of people try to make support Lucario work because they tell me, but Lucario is my favorite Pokemon. Like, there are other Pokemon that do the exact same thing, but are bulkier, and you don't have to worry about them constantly dying. I've seen a lot of Lucarios just straight up die through the resistance, even with defense investment, because he's just too frail. Next are support Pokemon that I've heard of that are floating around, and I just want to give you my thoughts on them, even though I don't have personal first-hand experience with many of these. Electrode is Magneton, but worse. Clodsire, there's no reason to bring Clodsire to a raid. Just don't do it. Mousehold is good for when you have a weak armor Poltegeist with you, where the idea is you put weak armor onto the raid boss and then you use any of the multi-hit moves from Mousehold to basically immediately get the raid boss to -6 defense, which is cool and works great actually. You just need a specific teammate. Friend Guard, Loaded Dice Bullet Seed also lets you pump up and annihilate very, very quickly. He's not that great of a support Pokemon in general, but in very specific use cases, Mousehold can pull its weight. Gyarados, I've seen a lot of people being like, oh, Gyarados is great with the Intimidate. It's like, he doesn't have enough good moves to work with. Like, Quillfish is just better. Support Luxio, he does the same thing as Quillfish. He has Fake Tears, he has Eviolite, Intimidate. He has good support moves, but Quillfish has more to work with, especially because Acid Spray goes through Tera Shields, and Quillfish's main weakness of ground is also a weakness for Luxio. There's just not a big reason to pick Luxio over Quillfish. It's not that he can't do his job, it's just Quillfish is just better. I'm contemplating Seaver as a D tier. He'll work, he'll live, and he'll do the job. He's just worse than Quillfish. Gardevoir has a very similar issue to Blissey. She actually has a better support move pool for raids than Blissey, but she's very passive because she doesn't get Screech or Fake Tears. And not having Screech or Fake Tears, and also not having something amazing to offset it, is just D tier. Slowking, similar deal. You need Screech, Fake Tears, Related, or something amazing to set you apart from the pack, and he does not have that. Metacham's main gimmick is skill swap huge power onto your offensive Pokemon. The issue with Metacham is that he doesn't really have enough of the useful support moves to work with. So very similar to Poltegeist, you have the one great turn and then you're done. Also, the main physical attackers in Azumarill, Iron Hands, and maybe if you want to throw in Koraidon, cannot have their abilities changed, or for Azumarill already has huge power. So there's just not a whole lot of situations where Metacham winds up pulling his weight. Gothitelle is very similar to Screamtail. She has similar support moves in Helping Hand, Taunt, and Screens. So she's got the generic stuff. She's bulky, but not as bulky as Screamtail. Has Helping Hand, Fake Tears, Screens. But her main thing over Screamtail is Taunt. The only thing really keeping Gothitelle out of A tier is just the combination of not having something special or having the super bulk. Like Magneton and Muck both bring huge bulk. Berserker has all the generic stuff, good typing, and the Steely Spirit. Golduck has everything he needs and unique things on top of that. Gothitelle just doesn't have that one amazing thing that would bring her up into A tier. Fast forward, I've had a few days to sleep on it, time to make some adjustments. Scovillain, definitely D tier. Pastry Doggo, probably actually D tier. He's still not very good, but he's comparable to Blissey. Also, I don't know how I forgot Armarouge. Armarouge probably at least B tier. He's got Screens, Taunt, Helping Hand, Acid Spray. He's got decent bulk, but his typing, being weak to Dark, Ghost, Water, Rock, and Ground, those weaknesses are bad for a lot of the really hard raid bosses that a lot of people want to take on. Also, I was a little bit harsh to Mischievous before. She really has all the tools that you need, and with Eviolite, she has enough bulk to really execute on a lot of it. Fast forward even more time, and I have even more corrections to issue. First is Magnezone is actually very, very solid right next to Magneton, because I don't know how I overlooked that he gets Helping Hand and Magneton does not, which is really a game changer here. Similarly, Electrode does get Helping Hand and a very fast Taunt, which actually does give him a pretty good niche. Also, Static to give sometimes paralysis on enemies that make contact with Electrode is pretty solid. He's still not the bulkiest, but he actually has in his move pool a lot of the tools that you will want for raiding. Deerling is kind of a funny pick. She gets Worry Seed, Charm, Fake Tears, and Helping Hand. This is enough for a good set, and she's actually decently bulky enough with Eviolite to work pretty well. She's just kind of outclassed by some of the other supports in B tier. I'm gonna make a special note to put Marill right next to Azumarill. Marill with the Eviolite has very similar bulk to Azumarill, but it's much clearer that Marill will not be going for belly drum strats. so it's a lot better to communicate with your team. Hawlucha, I've tried, is terrible. Goodra is a pretty solid cleric in C tier with Life Dew, Acid Spray, Chilling Water, and Tearful Look. He kind of wishes he had some more generally useful moves like Helping Hand and Taunt, and that's what's really stopping him from going into like B tier, but Goodra definitely has his niche. Also, I was a little bit harsh to Lucario before. He is extremely frail, but he is actually the only cleric in the game who learns Screech. And the thing is that a lot of times when you want cleric support, you usually want cleric support for belly drummers who are physical attackers. And for that, you'll usually want Screech. Lucario is the only Pokemon that really lets you satisfy both of those requirements. I've been knocked out horrendously with Lucario before, but he does have his niche. Revavroom gets Screech, Acid Spray, Taunt, and Parting Shot. He's very similar to Muck, but with worse defenses and does not get Helping Hand, which is kind of a deal breaker. But otherwise, he's an all right support. Florigato is also a pretty funny pick right next to Deerling. He gets Worry Seed, Fake Tears, Taunt, Helping Hand. A lot of Pokemon in B tier kind of like outclass him for that role, but I mostly bring him along because it is hilarious to watch your teammates' reaction to Florigato carrying the team. Actually, just because of the bulk, maybe Electrode really deserves to be in B tier. That about wraps it up. My opinion is constantly evolving as I learn more about these Pokemon, but this should give you like a general idea of what Pokemon are good for supporting in raids and why they are good for supporting in raids. If you have your own Pokemon or disagree with what our tier placement, feel free to comment down below and I'll see you around later. Bye-bye.